Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion podcast. This is Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower. And it's been a few weeks since our last program. And, we're going to blame that slight delay on an extra week in the calendar, some time out of the office, plus some other meetings and other events. And speaking of other events, my own cotton companion and colleague, Beck Barnes, took a little unplanned trip a few weeks ago that turned out to be a pretty big deal for him and all of the Ole Miss Nation. Just want to know, have you recovered, Beck? And kind of tell us about it, man.
Oh man, I've had plenty of time to recover. Gosh, you're right. I got to thinking about the timeline, and because it seems like forever ago, but I guess it was about 2-3 weeks ago. I was out and I went to Omaha and saw Ole Miss play in the College World Series, which if any of y'all ever get the chance to do it, man, I highly recommend it. It's tough to get to, and there's no way, I don't want to get into all the details, there's no way to book a hotel and a flight 2 weeks out unless you're gambling that your team's going to be there. And anyhow, man, it was, again, I don't want to get too detailed, but it was like planes, trains, and automobiles trying to get to Omaha, Nebraska on a quick turnaround, and wound up missing a flight. Plane travel in general, I do not recommend it to anybody who's listening. If you got a trip to take, just drive it. Listen to Beck, okay? Here's my life advice. Just drive it. You could be going from Miami to Seattle. I'm telling you, drive it, because it's a mess. I wound up missing a flight on a quick turnaround and had 10 minutes to hop on another, and I'm arguing with gate agents, and I hopped on a flight thinking I was going to Sioux City, Iowa, which is an hour from Omaha, and I was quickly told by a gal on the flight that I just boarded. She goes, "Oh no, this flight's going to Sioux Falls." I said, huh? I said, "What?" And she goes, yeah, it's in South Dakota. And so anyhow, I wound up 4 hours from Omaha and rented a car. And long story short, I'd have been in much better shape if I'd just driven from my house. But we made it, and Ole Miss won, and it was a blast. We played Oklahoma, who has a great team. And anyhow, it was a hit. I know Tennessee had a great baseball team this year too, Jim. So maybe
we did have a good season, and
you're not going anywhere. You'll be there before too long.
Oh yeah. Well, we ran into, I think, when you step back and look at all the teams that actually made the World Series, and we are really digressing here, folks, on this, because we always talk about from the Cotton Belt perspective. Everybody talks and brags sort of about their college football teams.
Yeah.
But I think you got to throw college baseball into this now, because correct me if I'm wrong, Beck, but didn't we have the teams that were there represented, of the 8 teams that were there, weren't 7 of them cotton producing states?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's only 8 teams there. And
I think Notre Dame was the only outlier.
Notre Dame was the only one that wasn't. Yeah, you're right.
So,
and in terms of our listenership, I mean, A&M was there right around all those Brazos farmers. I'm sure we're cheering for them. And
right.
I think Texas Tech's had a good team in recent years too, so they'll be there before
they
too
sure
long.
have. Well, you had Texas and Oklahoma both in this series, who are, as we know, strong cotton states.
Yeah.
So anyway, good for good for representation, and sorry for the the goofy chatter on this.
That's the College Baseball Companion. That's right.
It is.
Tune into our other podcast, the College Baseball Companion.
Yes, Cotton and College Baseball Companion. So anyway, well, in addition to to Beck and his Ole Miss celebration, there were a couple of other items that kind of caught the interest of the cotton market here over the last couple of weeks. I think of primary interest and possibly concern too was the extreme drop in commodity prices, which included cotton. That occurred shortly after we posted our last podcast, as usual. That sort of seems to be our MO on this. But there's sort of nothing like a 30 to 40 cent decline in price to catch your attention. But we do have to be mindful, and we've had this discussion with some of our economist friends. It wasn't just cotton that took it on the chin in this. So did almost every other commodity. So it was, from what we understand, it was a combination of the speculators who have kind of been running the market up for the last several months, running into a situation where they needed to take a look. It was the change of the marketing year, and there was a lot of discussion out there in terms of beginning to talk about recession. So the speculators basically cashed out, went home, and prices dropped on everything.
Yeah, cotton included. I know, Jim, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, it was a tough drop. It's crazy to sit here looking at, I think we're still north of 90 cents and be super disappointed about it. But, it's kind of just the type of year that it's been. But I do think we've found, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I thought I read the headline yesterday, we kind of found a floor and rebounded just a little bit. Maybe we're starting that climb back above $1 here before too long.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, that's true. I checked prices this morning. I think we were sitting at 94 cents on the December contract. And again, I agree with you. Most of the folks who are a whole lot smarter than us in this on this topic think we'll climb back up over $1, maybe between $1.04, $1.10 sometime soon. But most of that is probably going to be weather driven, which brings us to our next topic, this continuing issue of relentless hot and dry conditions across most of the cotton belt. I mean, quite honestly, anything that's not being irrigated right now is in tough shape. And that's not just cotton, that's corn, that's soybeans, that is sorghum. It's every crop that's out there. And really, you don't have to look much further than USDA's crop progress report this week, showing that 39% of the US crop was rated good to excellent, 34% was rated fair. Now, the 34% fair number is okay. We've had that in the past. The good to excellent number you really like to see in that mid 40s up to 50 range, which means that 27% of the crop is now rated poor to very poor. And actually, that's an improvement from the previous week. Previous week, we literally were sitting at everybody was in the 30s, or every rating was in the 30s. And these lower ratings are really impacting several states at this point, as you can imagine. I think Texas's rating for poor to very poor is currently sitting at 41%. Tennessee, surprisingly, but not so much after talking with a few folks, is sitting at 28%. Missouri's at 19%. Those are really, really high numbers for the lower end of the scale. And some areas around here did get a little rain this week, but man, it's still tough going in a lot of areas.
Yeah, nowhere more so than here in Memphis, Jim. And I know you know it, but gosh, it feels like we hadn't gotten a rain in a month. And I got the burn up yard to prove it. It seems like south here, my stepdad was telling me they got a pretty good storm, I think earlier this week down in the Mississippi Delta, which might have given some guys a little bit of relief, but I know that's little consolation, especially for our guys in Texas, where in the Southwest, where it just seems like year after year now, you just plan on a drought. And, if you get a rain, that's just a added bonus, it feels like.
I go back and looking real quick at the numbers. USDA did their July World Ag Supply and Demand Estimates, or the famous WASDE report, earlier this week. And it basically was showing, they were saying, okay, back on June 30th, USDA did their planted acreage report. I think it was like 12.5 million acres of cotton that were planted. That was about 250,000 more acres than they had projected earlier in the year. But they're saying their harvested area forecast right now is about 600,000 acres lower this month than it was last month. So basically means abandonment is projected higher, and it may be 4 times the previous year's level, which is going to leave us right at this point with U.S. production at 15.5 million bales, which is 1 million bales lower than we've been talking about up till this point. So it's going to be a tough year.
Yeah. I get out there and do a rain dance for the whole belt as soon as we're done recording.
Okay. We'll video that, and maybe we'll go to a video format.
No, unfortunately, no videos.
No videos. Okay. I think our listeners are probably happy with that situation. Well, the other thing is we're also entering summer meeting season, and we've got field days, we've had demonstrations, got some association meetings already out of the way, and we're trying to get to as many of these as we can as our schedules allow. This week, in fact, I was at Southern Cotton Ginners Association summer meeting, was able to catch up with our good friend, Dr. Cater Hake, who's Vice President for Agricultural and Environmental Research at Cotton Incorporated. And one of the topics on the agenda was cottonseed marketing and research, which really is a pretty big deal for ginners who rely on cottonseed as a revenue source. But Beck, as I always do, or certainly do from time to time, I've got something a little offbeat to drop in before we get to Cater on that. And this comes down to a different type of research and cotton related from a textile perspective. In Stockholm, Sweden, a restaurant crew is wearing cotton aprons that capture greenhouse gas from the air.
Oh boy.
And it's part of a pilot program of a technique developed by some researchers to help the fashion industry help lower its climate impact. Now, as you can imagine, with all the mills and things around the world, textile industry's got a pretty large carbon footprint, and they're becoming under increasing pressure to address that. Obviously, as shoppers become more aware of environmental impact of clothes, as global temperatures rise, it's nothing surprising. We hear it in the cotton market as well. So the Hong Kong Research Institute of Textiles and Apparel has developed an amine-containing solution that they can use to treat cotton, their fiber, yarn, or fabric, that helps cotton pull carbon dioxide gas toward it and capture it to stabilize it and store it on the surface of the textile. So it's an interesting process, and obviously in its very infancy stages at this point, but apparently there are several other projects to develop CO2 absorbing textiles out there. Their potential, as they say though, and their contribution to lessening environmental impact for the textile industry is still remains to be seen.
Yeah, boy, that's wild, and it's that's so appropriate as a lead into the Cater Hake interview that you got here for us, Jim, because boy, that sounds like something right out of Cotton Incorporated's playbook. I mean, that's the type of, if you've ever been to Cotton Incorporated's HQ there in the Research Triangle, North Carolina, Cary, North Carolina.
Right.
Boy, it's like going in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I mean, they have, each room is some, fun but zany innovation around cotton that they bring to market. And this thing with restaurant aprons that capture CO2, I mean, boy, that sounds truly right out of their playbook. So like I say, good tee up for the Cater Hake interview.
Yeah, well, obviously, as I mentioned, and we'll just move right into that right now, I did have the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Cater Hake this week to discuss the cottonseed program, as well as the other production research programs that Cotton Incorporated has going, and some recent addition and changes to their research group. So here's my conversation with Cater right now. Well, the 2022 growing season is well underway, and it's a good time, I think, for us to take a look at how the year's going, and maybe some other items that we need to kind of watch and keep in mind as we move ahead. And to help us out with this discussion, is the entire cotton industry's good friend and what I call sort of the Swiss Army knife of the industry, because he does a little bit of everything. Dr. Cater Hake, who's Vice President of Agricultural and Environmental Research at Cotton Incorporated. Cater, thanks for taking a few moments to visit.
Well, it's great to be visiting, and the Swiss Army knife is so true, but there's a lot of dull blades and broken blades. So,
well, let's go ahead and get the obvious out of the way first. USDA said a couple weeks ago that we planted 12.2 million acres of cotton this year, but it's looking like a high percentage of those dryland acres are already are suffering or have already kind of been zeroed out at this point. What are you seeing and hearing about this crop right now?
Well, definitely, it could be one of the highest disasters in the Texas area, but also Oklahoma and Kansas, but we're right now in Alabama, and it's amazing to talk with the growers here that have really suffered from drought. So this has been much more widespread than just the Southwest, and they were too wet early on. So it's just been the weather's been really tough on crops. The corn looks worse. It's the only thing we can say, and the late planted beans look the best. So clearly, it's a very challenging year for growers. It has been with the input cost, and crazy markets,
right,
and then crazy weather.
Well, like you said, you mentioned we're here in Alabama. We've been at the Southern Cotton Ginners Association meeting here in Florence. You were part of a discussion earlier today about cottonseed, which is always an important component of the cotton crop. Cotton Incorporated obviously is actively involved in marketing whole cottonseed and cottonseed oil. And your colleague Lynn Kilroy did an excellent job this morning, I think, highlighting the highlights, I guess, of the ongoing marketing promotion program for cottonseed. What type of research programs is your group working on to assist this effort, and why?
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought up the promotion program, because that's the objective. We're not doing this research just to accumulate papers to do research. Mm-hmm. We're doing it to add value to the product. So Lynn is running a promotion program for dairy cattle and beef cattle, mm-hmm. and that was research that was done 20 and 30 years ago.
Right.
We're refreshing it, so we get some new numbers and new techniques, but it's the same way the research program is looking into the future, and how can we promote and market cottonseed 10 years from now. And we're super excited. The latest bells and whistles is we've gotten really lucky comparing cottonseed oil to olive oil, and we're seeing some substantial benefits on blood lipids. Mm-hmm. And we've just now, the scientists, University of Georgia, Jamie Cooper and Chad Payton, have just put out their the post-pandemic papers, because it was interrupted a little bit,
right.
Showing similar to what they saw before, that cottonseed oil compared to olive oil has some wonderful things on blood lipids, particularly fasting blood lipids, that help people like you and I that are getting on in years.
Right. Now, obviously, a lot of the cottonseed oil promotion is geared more toward the food service industry and things like that, and it looks like from what Lynn was saying, there's some real successes there in terms of getting that industry on board at this point.
And absolutely, again, that's a wonderful example, because that's information that research gave us, again, 20 years ago. Right. But with the promotion is often reminding people of things they should know already. And cotton has these wonderful characteristics. It's got a very high smoke point, which means you can really crank up the temperatures, mm-hmm. which is great if you don't want greasy, soggy fries. Right. And it's really good with a neutral flavor, so it doesn't transfer flavor to the food. So chefs like it because then they can create the flavors they want.
That's right.
And it doesn't add a flavor. So you're absolutely right. The cottonseed oil promotion program is to the food service program.
Definitely. Well, obviously, you're still managing a pretty robust research program in cotton production as well. What areas are you focusing on right now? What types of preliminary findings are you starting to see?
Well, the number one challenge for growers are pests, and really resistant pests. So it's resistant weeds, and coming up real fast is resistant insects, and then probably diseases and nematodes. And the biggest cliff we're facing is weeds. We're just running out of silver bullets. For about 40 years we had a new herbicide mode of action, right. A new way to kill a weed. Every other year. In early 1980, we went flatline, and we've just been burning through the old modes of action. They got new generic names, new brand names, but they're old products. And so one of the most challenging areas is trying to find alternative ways to control weeds. Automation is going to play a really big role. And cotton is fortunate that Europe decided they didn't want to use herbicides, so they're really forced to invest and innovate in these areas. So a lot of the excitement is coming out of Europe and Israel, places like that, where we're looking at non-herbicide ways to control weeds, no silver bullets, and they're going to complement herbicides. But that's probably our biggest challenge right now, is the herbicide-resistant weeds, some way to control them.
Yeah. Now, I was speaking of the weed resistance, a couple of weeks ago, I was over in Jackson, Tennessee for Larry Steckel's weed tour.
Wonderful tour.
It was a great tour. And Larry, some of his plots basically were set up, I think, as to frighten people who were there. It's like, okay, if we lose dicamba, should we lose glyphosate? Should we lose glufosinate? What are we going to do? What's it going to look like? And it was a mess.
I've had trials back in the 80s where we did that, and we used prison labor to try to keep them clean. We couldn't get enough prisoners on those fields. I mean, we're not going back.
Right.
To hand hoe, and we're going to basically have to go back to heavy tillage,
right,
which sacrifices our soil health, and particularly with things like the drought and these intense rainfall, if we lose our soil health, then we've lost our yields and productivity as well. So it's an existential threat, which is, a 25-cent word that means it's a serious threat to all of agriculture.
Yeah. Now, I've talked with your colleague Ed Barnes about some of the new technologies that are out there. I had a chance to go see the See and Spray Ultimate technology down in Texas back in April. Amazing what that could bring to the field. But there are also some other alternative machine learning AI type technologies that are coming down the pike that show up an awful lot of promise.
And we're cotton and agriculture in general is really helped by the fact that we can go grab these good ideas from other industries.
Right.
And we don't have to pay the heavy lifting to create them. And the machine learning AI that you're talking about is exactly one. The facial recognition that a lot of people have on the smartphone, that is easily translated to recognizing what's cotton and what's not
weed,
cotton,
right,
or what's a weed, and actually, anything that's green and not cotton, zaps a little sprayer at. Or even as you're saying with the See and Spray, it can reduce the total pesticide use in these fields dramatically, and we can use products that maybe we don't have the safety margin because we're just spraying the weed instead of the crop. So those definitely, I think, are going to be huge in helping us manage resistant weeds going forward.
Yeah, well, obviously, these are all transitions that we're seeing right now in production. You've got new technologies, we talked about new challenges, but you're seeing some transitions at Cotton Incorporated at this point in terms of your research group. You've got some new additions, you've got some new expertise in there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're just super excited. Thank you for asking that, because we do have long-term stability at Cotton Incorporated, and so we've just recently had some turnover. So Tom Wiedegardner, who for 30 years, he created the Cottonseed Research and Marketing Program, promotion program. Mm-hmm. He retired, and we were really fortunate to bring in Dr. Evie Jaconis. Name is Susan, but she goes by Evie.
Okay.
And she was trained by the absolute best cotton physiologists. She did her postdoc with Mick Bange in Australia. But more recently, she's been working on human nutrition for lentils and dry beans and chickpeas. And so she is now leading our cottonseed research program.
Okay.
And she is hardcore human nutrition, cattle nutrition, dairy nutrition, thinking about how cotton fits into nutrition. Just wonderful. The second person who's just joined us is, most of you viewers will remember Bob Nichols, mm-hmm. who passed away. He retired a few months before he passed away, and he said he would have retired 1 year earlier if he knew he was going to pass. That tells you how much he loved working with cotton. Caitlin Bissonette, Dr. Caitlin Bissonette has joined us from the University of Missouri, and she is leading the charge on all things diseases and all things nematodes. So we're just super excited to have both Dr. Jaconis and Dr. Bissonette join us and take our program to new heights, new levels.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I always have to ask you on this, because people know that you're a pretty excitable guy, things. Stepping back, what's really exciting you right now about this cotton industry today?
Well, I think the most exciting thing is what's gotten us through successes in the past, and that's the ability of the cotton industry to work together and collaborate. I've worked with other commodities, and they don't have anywhere near that level of camaraderie, but it's really willingness to work for the greater good. We've always been a small player in U.S. agriculture, right?
Right.
And as a result, we've had to pull together, and from everywhere, from the policy to the research to promotion. So to me, that's what's going to keep us strong going forward, is the willingness of those various sectors to work together and solve problems that are for the greater good of cotton.
Sounds good. Well, Cater, thanks so much for taking time to visit today. I know you're in a hurry. We've got to get things going, and it's always good, especially to sit down and visit with you face to face. this point and kind of swap stories and, compare our histories together in this business. So anyway, I'll let you get back to it. Appreciate your time. Have a great trip back, and we'll visit again maybe later this year.
Absolutely. Great to see you here at the meeting. So thank you.
Thanks, Gator.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. As always, we want to thank our guest, which today was Dr. Cater Hake, for taking the time to visit with us. Cater's been a great friend of Cotton Grower through the years, and we appreciate him. And as always, we want to thank you, dear listener, for joining us. If you like what you hear here at the Cotton Companion podcast, please be sure and spread the word. Tell your buddies about us. Tell your farming neighbors about the podcast. And here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
The Cotton Companion podcast is produced twice monthly by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. My name's Jim Stedman. His name's Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you in 2 weeks, the next episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, stay safe and stay comfortable and cool.
Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer. Yeah,